This is
Essential.
This is Essential Audio.
Hi all, welcome to the MoneyPot, our podcast at Money 2020. I'm Sanjeev Kalita, the editor-in-chief, and I'm so excited to have a new person on the podcast with me today. Gary Dempsey is a content lead for Money 2020 Europe. Welcome, Gary.
Hey, thank you, Sanjeev. I'm so happy to be on the MoneyPot finally.
Are you joining us from London?
Yes, I've been self-isolating with my two roommates and we are all working from home. Wi-Fi is the new oil in our household. To keep sane, I escape every day for a bike ride at lunchtime and I've turned our living room into a makeshift gym.
Yep, and I'm hanging with the foxes here in my backyard in Virginia. But let's get to the story, because we've got a really exciting story from the UK. COVID-19 is hitting Europe and the UK in particular hard, with London being the epicenter in Great Britain.
Yes, in the UK, we are in week 3 or 4 of social distancing / government enforced lockdown phase. And like most places, the British government is passing relief in an attempt to avoid a recession and keep families, small businesses and corporations afloat, but most importantly, to keep people employed. On March 20th, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, announced a £350 billion bailout. This bailout, however, was only to cover those in full-time employment.
And like all the government relief packages that are passing in a flurry, there's some issues with how to implement them. The intent is to keep as many people employed as possible and provide funds for the near future. Then we'll see if the economy bounces back after we have dealt with the health crisis. But all of them are finding it difficult to account for the self-employed.
And it is the same in the UK, but here we have had an incredible, fantastic story of innovation. With such a short turnaround in just one weekend, there's no rest for the wicked in fintech.
And like so many stories in fintech, it started with a tweet.
Yes, 2 weeks ago, in fact, on the Saturday following the announcement. Simon Taylor of 11FS was listening to the radio and he heard the discussion about how the government's bailout scheme did not include the self-employed. Simon then tweeted that the problem could be solved using open banking, effectively issuing a challenge to the industry. And we had a chance to talk to the people who took up that challenge. Jamie Campbell, the co-founder of Fronted, and Freddie Kelly, the CEO of Credit Kudos, who were nominated in a manner of speaking by Jamie's co-founder, Simon Vance Collina.
A lot of self-employed people were looking at, a vast amount of income reduction. And Simon Taylor, when he was listening to the radio and heard that these problems were being talked about, tweeted that there could be a way to solve this with open banking, and had listed a couple of steps in a process that might be able to solve it. Cue my co-founder piping up saying that Fronted and Credit Kudos could build this in a weekend. And then it really just kind of got a bit out of hand after that. It went from being a tweet to something much more. I think Freddie was probably involved in the next step, of how it kind of kicked off. So I want to let you pick up from there.
Yeah, I was minding my own business, eating my breakfast in self-isolation on the sofa, and saw Simon's tweet come in, quickly followed by Simon Vance Collina, Jamie's co-founder, and then responded saying, we could definitely do this. And then before we knew it, we were on a video call discussing what exactly the MVP, the minimum viable product, would look like, and what the goal was. And we sort of fleshed that out, and then team members from both businesses started to join, and we set up a Slack channel and got people all together. And sort of by the afternoon, we decided what needed to be done, and we delegated tasks and started setting about building it.
So wait, let's back up a minute and explain more about Credit Kudos and Fronted. Credit Kudos was started by Freddie Kelly to reimagine how to establish and score credit. He'd moved to the UK from the US and suddenly had a thin credit file, which made it harder for him to obtain credit, and when he could, it was at a higher rate.
And Jamie Campbell is the co-founder of Fronted, which makes life easier for renters by helping them finance their rental deposits. So Jamie, his co-founder Simon Vance Collina, and Freddie are all problem solvers.
Yep. So what was the solution they built?
They basically built an easy and automated way to certify your income if you are self-employed.
We as Credit Kudos, our primary business function is in ingesting and processing open banking data and doing income recognition and doing classification and risk scoring. So we set about building a system that would allow us to take that data from our back end and turn it into this basically like a PDF statement with these different declarations in it. So, how much I used to earn, how much I now earn, how this has affected me, so on and so forth. And Jamie and the guys at Fronted put together a really nice front end that would allow people that are needing to get this certification to go through that process step by step and connect data and understand how that would be used and how it would affect them.
But it wasn't just Credit Kudos and Fronted. Before long, a significant cohort of the UK fintech community became involved.
The most miraculous thing about all of this was that it started from a tweet based on on an interview in the radio, and it ended up being a culmination of 41 people within the Slack group, 11 different organizations. And the way in which we built this, we made everything open source. The GitHub repo was public. All the build process was public. The design of the product was public, and we created a Twitter stream or a Twitter thread of every basically big step that we made, landmark step that we made. We managed to turn this thing around from problem statement to product idea to execution and push live in less than 48 hours.
He said that there were 11 companies and 41 people working on it within 48 hours?
There were fintechs that specialize in compliance, lawyers creating terms and conditions, marketing creating a UX video and reaching out to the media, and meetings with government agencies such as the Treasury, HMRC, and the FCA to talk through what had been built. So many people wanted to help. In times like these, it is nice to know that so many of us are willing to jump in and help solve problems to make life easier.
I think so too. And they've gotten very far in an amazingly short amount of time. To go from ideation to product in the market in 48 hours is nothing short of miraculous. But as so often happens with financial services, this is where it hit a snag.
Yeah, so the UK government hasn't actually adopted it, which is a real shame because the product is amazing. It is live on covidcredit.uk, and you can see it and the video that shows how it works.
So sometimes the government has a hard time managing the various responsibilities, including consumer protection, fiscal stability, and many other things. And, a lot of times they still imagine people going to the bank branch.
Yeah, Jamie mentioned that during our interview.
Gary, you mentioned Rishi Sunak's original announcement of the small business interruption loan scheme. He actually said, you'll be able to walk into your bank branch and get this loan. And the irony of that now in just a week or two passing, the idea of anyone walking into somewhere on the high street is pretty crazy. And so, it really shows that we need online, fully automated processes. And, a lot of what this change in circumstances is driving is businesses really expediting their adoption of digital technologies because they just can't cope with it.
Finding a way of getting kind of capital to these individuals who've had a loss of income in a quicker and more effective way should absolutely be one of the priorities of the government. I think it's just there's only a certain speed in which they're used to working towards.
Makes you wonder how they think people should stay at home and fill the banks with people applying for loans.
I know, it's crazy, right? But this highlights a larger issue across the board. Government systems are typically behind others in technology. And in situations like this, where speed is a real issue, it shows how much we need to digitize and automate as many processes as we can.
In the US, they can't find enough people who know the coding language to create the necessary bridges to expedite their issuance of loans from banks. And the individual aid is being issued in checks, which died in the UK over 10 years ago.
Yeah, I suppose it does make us look advanced. The odd part of slow adoption by the UK government is that the UK have been on the forefront of the adoption of open banking. They've been pushing the standards, so I asked Freddie about why.
There's challenges across the board, and it all comes down to this massive influx of volume. And the only way you can scale to that volume is having automated processes. And we're lucky in the UK that we've taken the lead with open banking, globally to actually implement some of this stuff before anyone else did. And therefore we have this great framework now to benefit from and can input some of these measures into real life solutions like COVID credit sort of demonstrates.
It is a shame. It would be such a great example for other governments to follow and adopt. And a lot of other governments are dealing with the same issue. A lot of US fintechs are trying to push the government to allow them to help distribute relief. If the UK did it, it would be such a great showcase, and I would think businesses would be pushing the government for adoption as well.
It feels ridiculous because business does want the government to reach out to other fintech solutions as well. The amount of aid and the number of applications that need to be processed are overwhelming.
I think I saw today in the Telegraph that iWalker, Oak North, and a number of other business lenders, are quite frustrated with the government's reliance on the large banks to issue these funds when they're just not used to these volumes of companies kind of coming to them needing this relief. I think they were stating something like a 40 times increase in the volumes that they're used to, and banks just can't process them that quickly. Everything's done via the phone or in quite manual processes, whereas these modern lenders are much more capable of spinning up and identifying customers and issuing funds at a faster rate. And I think the fintech industry really is trying to demonstrate to its best ability that we're ready. Like we can solve these problems in quick and novel technology-led ways. And one of these solutions will absolutely be picked up, I'm absolutely sure. And the government will benefit from the work that these fintechs are doing.
It's definitely a global problem, and I think one of the trends that we've talked about here is the fact that coronavirus is really accelerating this. We all said that there's so many of these big organizations that for a very long time, banks being a prime example of this, have said we can't work remotely, it's got too many barriers and all this stuff, and suddenly guess what, we're all working remotely. And I think the need to make things digital and accessible anywhere has just been massively accelerated, and that's something that we're going to see across fintech, not just in the UK.
Freddie is absolutely right that this is a global issue. This would be the perfect opportunity for governments to utilize the breakthroughs in financial technology and demonstrate their abilities to get real aid to real people. And we know that this virus is changing the rate of adoption to a lot of technologies.
Absolutely. And we are living proof as we are all working from home. The industry has said that they can't do remote work for years, but this emergency has given them no choice. And I don't know if we will ever go back completely.
I don't think we will either. All adoption will increase. Let's hope that the UK and other governments will put this and other brilliant fintech solutions in place soon.
Yeah, and if they do, it could save hundreds of jobs and small businesses.
Thank you for helping us get that story, Gary. That is it for this episode of the MoneyPot. We want to thank Freddie Kelly and Jamie Campbell for being our guests.
And we want to thank our producers, Roland Bodenham and Rachel Morrissey. I also want to mention that we are really excited to see everyone in Amsterdam during the new dates for Money 2020 Europe, September 22nd to September 24th. We hope by that time everyone will be healthy and we will be past the hump of this crisis.
And I want to mention that the US call for content is open for the US show in October. Thank you for joining us. If you like the podcast, please leave a review in iTunes. Thank you.
This is
Essential.
This is Essential Audio.